ironically, this Jewish attitude to the Holocaust depreciates the Holocaust, devalues the Holocaust. It says actually the Holocaust is nothing special. It keeps happening all the time, so it's nothing special. Whereas the Holocaust is a very special thing, and absolutely an aberration in Jewish history. And it's the Jews themselves who are devaluing the Holocaust by comparing it to October 7th, with all due respect. I mean, October 7th has been a horrific atrocity. Well over 700 civilians, and forget the soldiers. The soldiers are there to die. That's their role. So I have no beef with the soldiers. We are enemies with Hamas. Hamas had every right to kill the soldiers. But 700 civilians were massacred, brutally raped, mutilated. I mean, horrible. If you read the testimonies, these are animalistic acts, but beyond barbaric. And yet, this is not the Holocaust. This is not even remotely like the Holocaust. Every Jewish leader, Netanyahu, Herzog, the president, I mean, they all only yesterday compared October 7th to the Holocaust. There's no comparison, not even remotely. It's not even an echo. Completely no. There have been eruptions of anti-Semitism, which were based largely on economics. For example, when people wanted to not pay back, to default on the debts to the Jews. Jews were the main moneylenders. So anti-Semitism was a convenient pretext. Or maybe it was the assumption that the Jews cannot develop loyalty. That's the Alfred Dreyfus case, where the problem was not so much his Jewishness, but the fact that the Jews cannot be trusted, because they're Jews first and everything else second. I think it's a rejection of otherness. It's a rejection of otherness. I think it's easily substantiated, this claim, because people who are anti-Semites are also typically racist, also typically conservative or alt-right. Also, in other words, they don't have a single grievance, but they are into grievances. They relate to the world via the grievance process. They always find a reason to complain somehow about something concerning someone, you know. So I think anti-Semitism is a grievance identity movement that has to do with othering, with the other. And of course, the Jew is the quintessential other, because the Jew is everywhere. The Jew is different, very often visibly different. They wear different clothes, the Orthodox Jews, for example, and so on. So they're everywhere, they're different. They're also different as far as their culture, as far as their philosophy, as far as their ideologies, as far as their open-mindedness, as far as their creativity goes, and so on. Jews have been the catalyst and the ferment in most intellectual movements of the 20th century, most sciences of the 20th century, most arts of the 20th century. They're all, to varying degrees, Jewish inventions. And not everyone is happy with what has happened in the 20th century. Actually, I would say that by now a majority are not happy with what has happened in the 20th century. People are not happy with science. They're not happy with science. They're not happy with the arts. They're not happy with the prevailing culture. They reject it. They're not happy with philosophies and ideologies that governed the 20th century, because they led to catastrophe, calamities, and so on. And all these, like it or not, they had a pronounced Jewish ingredient in them. So the Jew is the quintessential other. So here you have someone who is a loser, someone who is a failure, someone who can't find his place or her place. Usually it's a his, by the way, it's usually male. Can't find his or her place in society, cannot compete, cannot win, He needs to find a scapegoat. And the scapegoat is the other. And the first other that comes to mind is the Jew. But then I think what we're missing is the fact that once the floodgates have opened, anti-Semitism is the key that fits in the lock. Once the door is open, once the floodgates have opened, the grievances and the hatred are directed at other minorities. Could be LGBTQ, could be blacks, could be, I mean, you name it. It's anti-Semitism is the key that unlocks grievance-based identity politics. About 750,000, anywhere between 400 and 750 Palestinians, there's no agreement on the number, were driven out of the land of Palestine, the lands that comprise Palestine, between 1947 and 1949. That part is true. However, the overwhelming majority stayed within Palestine. So they were internally displaced people, not refugees. A small minority emigrated because they had money, emigrated to Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt. These countries did not want to accept them. So they had to stay within Palestine. And then at some point, a war, a full-fledged war erupted, especially with the invasion of the Arab armies. And at that point, the Palestinians started to leave the territory of Palestine. Now, here are the numbers. 20% of Palestinians were driven forcibly out of the land of Palestine by the Jews, by the Jewish forces, by the Haganah, which later became the Israeli Defense Force. So the IDF, or the Haganah before it, they drove away about 100,000 Palestinians, anywhere between 100,000 and maybe 150,000, forcibly. That was expulsion, absolutely true. However, the rest, anywhere between 300 and 650,000, left voluntarily of their own accord. And there are several reasons for that. Number one, Jewish forces committed atrocities in various villages, most notably Dir Yassin, which was a friendly village, by the way. That's the irony. It was a village friendly to the Jews. And the rumors about these massacres and thefts, the Jewish forces stole a lot. So these rumors created panic, and the Palestinians ran away. Number two, many foreign Arabs from other countries, Iraqis mainly, literally invaded Palestine, pretending to be protective forces. Actually what they did, they were marauders, they were brigands, and they actually committed atrocities against the Palestinian population, which dwarf the atrocities committed by the Jews. And so the population escaped both the IDF, which at that time was just being formed. There was no discipline, no control. Every commander did whatever the hell he wanted and so on. So they were terrified. The locals were terrified of the IDF, and they were terrified of the forces allegedly there, ostensibly there to protect them, because they were absolute criminals, criminal gangs. The third reason, they were told to leave. They were told to leave. Arab governments told the population to leave, although it is not true, as the Israelis say, that Arab governments told the men to leave. That is not true. Arab governments told the women and children to leave, but they instructed the men to stay. Be that as it may, hundreds of thousands of people left because they were so advised by the Arab governments. Put all of it together, and the majority of the Nakba, quantitatively, the Nakba was a voluntary act, not a military expulsion, not a transfer.
People might dispute that. It does sound like people were fleeing for their lives, a sheer mortal terror.
I said that the rumors about the atrocities by the IDF, the rumors about the atrocities by the Iraqi force, drove the population to escape. Absolutely. But they were not driven to escape. Like no force came into a village and said, now you must go away, you must run away, and so on and so forth. And so the Palestinian depiction of the Nakba is a lie. When they say that the overwhelming vast majority of the population were herded into camps and trucks and driven away by the IDF. The IDF didn't have this capacity, even had they wanted to. It was overstretched on four fronts, and the total number of IDF forces was about 40 or 50,000. They didn't have the power to do this, the capacity to do this. This is a Palestinian lie. And I mentioned Israeli lies, yeah, and not one-sided. They all lie. Both parties lie. And a good historian exposes these lies, and even-handedly, with no prejudice or bias, you know. So of course, Israeli atrocities contributed to the flight. No question about it. And Israelis did commit atrocities, not only Deir Yassin, as the Israelis claim. It was a pattern, quite a few. And not only against bodies, but against not only physical assaults, but also theft, a lot of theft. Yeah.
What's absolutely categorically clear, that is undeniable, is that there was a massive population displacement.
Yes.
You can discuss the means by which it happened, but it was a 2-year period of a terrifying, appalling.
To single out Hamas and eliminate it while not touching the civilian population and proposing a solution for the conflict. However long it's going to take, 5 years, 10 years. Everyone has been involved. We're going to kill one way or another. But we're not going to touch the civilian population. They've done nothing wrong. Even if they supported Hamas and celebrated Hamas and agreed with Hamas, they're entitled to their own opinions. They haven't done anything. Rather than do this, Israel obliterated the Gaza Strip, generating the next Hamas. Stupid. It was stupid, simply stupid. It was such an amazing historical opportunity. And we squandered it. I mean, Israelis squandered it. Stupidly. They still do. Stupidly. So I rage against the stupidity, not only against the war crimes.